The certified deed felt heavier than a few sheets of paper had any right to feel. Its edges pressed into my palm, while heat from the fireplace warmed one side of my face and the cold radiating from the windows chilled the other. Beyond the glass, Lake Michigan was a sheet of black steel. Behind me, 32 guests were applauding. Champagne glasses chimed, and the room smelled of roasted rosemary, cinnamon, and the pine garland my mother had wrapped around my staircase. They were applauding my sister. Courtney stood beside the Christmas tree in a cream silk dress, one hand resting on her daughter Maddie's shoulder. My father, George, placed a black velvet box in front of her. Inside were 2 guest keycards, the same cards he and my mother had used for years whenever I allowed them into the building. My mother lifted her champagne. "To Courtney's new beginning," Patricia Barrett announced, "and to a home finally filled by the people who need it most." Several relatives smiled at me as though I had already agreed. Courtney opened the box. Maddie's eyes widened when she saw the cards. "Is one of those mine?" she asked. My mother answered before Courtney could. "Soon, sweetheart." Then Patricia looked directly at me. "Nicole will be settled somewhere else after New Year's. She travels so much she barely uses this place anyway." A few guests stopped clapping. Most did not. They had spent 6 years hearing my mother call the Penthouse our city home. I had corrected her in private and let it pass in public because I had believed the deed mattered more than her performance. That night, I learned how expensive silence could become. I walked toward the Christmas table. I did not raise my voice. I did not touch the velvet box. I placed one hand beside my father's champagne glass and raised the certified deed high enough for every person in the room to see the county recorder's seal. "Before anyone congratulates Courtney," I said, "Mom and Dad have 2 choices." The applause died. My father stared at the document. My mother's smile held, but only at the corners. "Hand over every guest keycard you have," I continued. "Or read the owner's name on this deed and explain why a lender has a document bearing my forged signature." Courtney's fingers closed around the velvet box. Someone near the fireplace whispered my name. My mother set down her glass with deliberate care. "This is neither the time nor the place." "You chose the time," I said. "And you chose my place. Before I tell you how my family turned my home into collateral without asking me, I hope you're doing well. And please stay with me to the end and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this." 7 days earlier, I came home from a business trip one evening ahead of schedule. The elevator opened directly into the private foyer just after 6. Snowmelt darkened the toes of my boots. My shoulders ached from carrying my laptop through O'Hare, and the apartment smelled of orange peel and hot glue. My mother had been assembling Christmas centerpieces again. I heard her voice before I saw anyone. "She can pack," Patricia said. "Our golden girl deserves this place more." I stopped with one glove still half removed. My parents were in the living room, the fireplace was on, and Christmas music played low enough that they assumed it covered their conversation. From the foyer, a narrow wall concealed me while leaving their voices clear. My father sighed. "You still need Nicole to sign." "She will." "You don't know that." "I know, my daughter. She won't embarrass us on Christmas." My grip tightened around the handle of my suitcase. George lowered his voice, but not enough. "The lender wants confirmation before closing. And they'll get it. Once everyone congratulates Courtney, Nicole will not stand there and take a home away from 2 children." It took effort not to step into the room. Not because I was afraid of them, because the word lender changed the shape of what I had heard. My mother could call Courtney the golden girl until her voice failed. She could believe my home would be better used by a married woman with children. Those were insults. A lender meant paperwork, valuation, and a timeline. It meant someone outside the family had been told a story about my property. I moved backward before the wheels of my suitcase could click against the marble. The service hall led to my office and the secondary staircase. I carried my bag there, shut the door without engaging the latch, and listened. Patricia continued in the confident tone she used when she had already recast a decision as a favor. "Maddie saw the room. She loves it." My father said, "You showed her?" "I showed Courtney. Maddie happened to be with her. That was a mistake." "No, it makes this real." I waited until they moved toward the kitchen. Then I stepped into my office, set down my suitcase, and took out my phone. I wrote the exact sentences I had heard, including the reference to a lender and closing. I added the time. That was how I worked with clients. Facts first, interpretation later. When my parents finally noticed me, I was standing by the kitchen island with a glass of water. My mother recovered first. She always did. "You're home early. My last meeting was canceled. We would have picked you up." I managed. George's eyes went briefly toward the living room. "We were just finishing some decorations." "I can see that." Patricia smiled and touched my sleeve. "You look exhausted. Go unpack. We'll lock up when we leave." There were questions I could have asked. I could have repeated her sentence word for word and watched both of them scramble. I could have demanded every key card on the spot. Instead, I said, "Good night." My mother kissed the air beside my cheek. My father carried a cardboard box toward the elevator. Neither of them mentioned Courtney, the lender, or the fact that they had planned my departure while standing in my home. Once the elevator doors closed, I locked the foyer and walked through the penthouse slowly. At first, the changes were small enough to dismiss. A silver frame containing a photograph of me with Sarah had disappeared from the console beside the fireplace. I found it face down in a buffet drawer beneath spare napkins. In its place, my mother had arranged a framed photograph of Courtney, Evan, Maddie, and Owen taken outside Courtney's first restaurant. 2 coffee table books had been moved to make room for a catalog from a luxury children's furniture company. Several pages were folded at beds, desks, and built-in shelves. I photographed everything before touching it. In the guest bedroom, a measuring tape lay on the dresser. Blue painter's tape marked sections of the wall. Beside the lamp was a printed floor plan with handwritten dimensions and a title across the top. Maddie's new penthouse room. For a moment, anger gave way to something quieter. Maddie was 12. If her mother had told her this room would be hers, she had no reason to question it. She was not the person who had decided I could be removed from my own home. She was a child being handed a promise that did not belong to the adults making it. I folded the plan once and placed it in a clear file sleeve. The desk drawer in my bedroom was unlocked. Nothing appeared missing, but I checked each folder anyway. Passport, divorce judgment, mortgage statements, insurance policies. An old building file from when I bought the penthouse 6 years earlier sat near the bottom. The label read, Homeowners Association and Owner Forms. I flipped through it only long enough to confirm the documents were there. My original registration form, emergency contacts, copies of identification, and an old signature page remained clipped together. I returned the folder to the drawer, locked it, and moved the key to the small safe in my closet. At the time, it was routine housekeeping. I had no reason yet to understand why that old signature page mattered. I checked the rest of the apartment. Nothing else had been removed, but the guest room closet held 3 empty garment bags and a stack of storage labels. The labels were printed with Courtney's last name. They had not merely imagined the move. They had started organizing it. I called Sarah from the kitchen. She answered on the second ring, her voice competing with the sounds of dishes and a school choir recording in the background. "You're back early," she said. "How did you know?" "You sent me a picture of the airport carpet and called it a crime against humanity." Despite myself, I smiled. "I need you to tell me whether I'm overreacting. That sentence usually means someone has already crossed a line." I told her what I had heard. I left out the word forged because I did not know anything had been forged yet. I said my parents might have been discussing an idea. I said perhaps Courtney was only considering staying temporarily. I said my mother dramatized everything. Sarah let me finish. "Did they ask you?" "No." "Did Courtney ask you?" "No." "Then this isn't a request, Nicole. They made a decision about your property and planned to inform you after they had made refusal painful. I don't know that they can actually do anything. That isn't the same as saying they haven't tried." I looked toward the guest bedroom. "There's a floor plan with Maddie's name on it." Sarah went quiet for a second. "Take pictures." "I already did." "Good. And check who has been inside." "My parents have guest cards." "Then check the cards." I leaned against the counter. I should have stopped Mom years ago when she called this place hers. "Yes," Sarah said without softening it. "But letting her show off at dinner is not permission to give away your home." I didn't think anyone believed her. She believed herself. That was enough to start. Sarah did not tell me to destroy Christmas or call the police. She did not insist my family had always been evil. She reminded me to eat, asked whether my office files were secure, and told me not to confront anyone until I knew what the word lender meant. After we ended the call, I sent a short message to Leah Grant, the building manager. "Are you still downstairs? I need to review guest access tied to my unit." Her reply came almost immediately. "I'm here until 8. Come down when ready." I changed out of my travel clothes, put the floor plan and photographs into my work bag, and took the elevator to the lobby. The lobby smelled of cedar polish and wet wool. A delivery driver was shaking snow from his coat near the revolving doors. Leah stood behind the management desk in a navy blazer, reading my message again when I approached. "Is something wrong with the unit?" she asked. "Possibly. Have my parents used their guest cards while I was away?" Leah's expression shifted from professional ease to caution. "They have access because you authorized it." "I know. I'm asking whether the cards were used." She turned to her monitor. "I can confirm activity connected to your unit. I'll need to pull the official access report for exact times." "Was Courtney Sloan here?" Leah typed, then paused. "Yes, more than once." "With my mother?" "On 2 visits. Another time she entered using Patricia's guest card after the visitor form had already been approved." "Did she bring anyone?" Leah looked at me. "A few visitors were registered. One signed in as a property consultant." "What kind of consultant?" "The form doesn't specify. There may be a company name in the scanned record. Please send me the complete report and the visitor forms under the owner access policy. I can have them to you tonight." I thanked her and went back upstairs. My parents had always treated paperwork as the dull part that came after they decided what everyone should do. I had built my career on knowing paperwork was where decisions became consequences. At 9:14, Leah's email arrived. The report showed Patricia's guest keycard had opened the private elevator 4 times in 12 days. Courtney had been present on 3 visits. The visitor forms listed a furniture representative, a photographer, and one man whose company name I did not recognize. I searched it. The website loaded with photographs of glass towers, lakefront condos, and professionally staged interiors. The man was not a decorator. He was not a contractor. He did not measure rooms for children's furniture. I had expected a designer. The name beside Patricia's guest card belonged to a luxury residential appraiser who specialized in high-end condominiums. The next morning, freezing rain tapped against the penthouse windows while the radiator clicked beneath the glass. My coffee had gone bitter before I finished half of it, and the printed access report left a faint chemical smell on my kitchen table. I read it 3 times, not because the information was complicated, but because every line made the same point in a different way. My family had not wandered into my home with a decorator and a few innocent ideas. They had brought in people who measured, photographed, and valued property. The first questionable visit happened 12 days before I returned from my trip. Courtney had entered with a woman registered as a photographer. They stayed for 1 hour and 43 minutes. The hallway camera showed Courtney carrying a garment bag, while the photographer rolled in 2 hard equipment cases. 4 days later, my mother arrived with a man whose visitor form described him as a space planning consultant. He carried a laser measuring device and a clipboard. The camera showed Patricia holding doors open for him as confidently as though she had scheduled work on her own property. The most recent visit belonged to my father. George had entered with the residential appraiser whose name ended the report. The man carried a tablet, a compact measuring case, and a leather portfolio. They remained inside for nearly 2 hours. My father had not merely known about the plan. He had escorted the appraiser through my home. At 9, I met Leah in the building management office. The room was small and warm, with 2 monitors glowing above a row of labeled key envelopes. Wet tire noise hissed from the street beyond the lobby windows. Leah placed a folder between us. "I printed only the records connected to your unit and the guest credentials you authorized," she said. "You'll also receive encrypted copies through the owner portal." "Thank you." She opened the first page. "Your parents are listed as personal guests. They are not occupants, tenants, co-owners, or household members. They don't receive mail here." "No." "They've never paid building fees." "No." "All assessments and service charges come from your owner account, and their cards can be disabled whenever I request it." "Yes, they are revocable guest credentials." I nodded, though I already knew the answer. I needed the facts, stated without my mother's voice wrapped around them. Leah pointed to the visitor forms. We approved these people because they were accompanied by valid guests connected to your unit. Our staff had no reason to assume the visits were unauthorized. I understand. I'm not blaming the building. I reviewed the hallway footage after your message. No one entered your locked bedroom or office from the corridor, and no property was carried out through the main elevators. What about documents? The cameras cannot show what was inside their bags. That was fair. Cameras recorded movement, not intention. I asked Leah to flag my unit so that no appraiser, contractor, photographer, lender, or moving service could enter without my direct approval. I did not disable my parents' cards yet. Removing access immediately might warn them before I understood what they had done. Instead, Leah added an owner verification requirement for all professional visitors. When I returned upstairs, I opened every source of information that legally belonged to me. I reviewed my personal email, my building portal, my mortgage account, my homeowner's insurance notices, my county tax records. I checked the physical mail that had accumulated during my trip. Nothing showed a change in title. Nothing showed a new lien. My mortgage balance remained where it should have been. My insurance policy still listed me as the only named insured. Then I found an envelope that had been pushed beneath a restaurant supply catalog. The address was mine, but the name above it was Barrett Sloan Hospitality Group, Courtney's business company. Inside was an invoice for a commercial site inspection and valuation coordination fee. The amount was $1,250. The property address listed my penthouse. The invoice did not say the restaurant owned the property. It only showed Courtney's company had ordered or been charged for work performed there. At the bottom was a reference number and the name of a financial services company I did not recognize. I photographed the envelope and every page. Then I placed the original in a document sleeve. My phone rang while I was labeling the file. Courtney's name appeared on the screen. I answered without mentioning the invoice. "Hey," she said brightly, "you made it home." I did. Mom said your trip ended early. Did you see the things in the guest room? The catalog and the measurements? She laughed as though I had described Christmas decorations. Maddie got excited. Mom wanted to surprise you. With what? A possible refresh. That room has looked the same forever. It's my guest room. I know. That's why I said possible. I let the silence hold. Courtney filled it. You travel all the time, Nicole. It wouldn't hurt to make the place warmer for family. Who was the appraiser? Her pause was short, but it was there. What appraiser? The man Dad brought into the penthouse. Oh, that. Her voice changed, smoothing itself out. He was helping with the value of some pieces. Furniture, artwork, built-ins. Mom was curious. The company specializes in luxury condominium appraisal. Companies offer more than one service. What was his name? I don't remember. You let someone measure my home and you don't remember his name? I wasn't here when Dad came. You were here with a photographer. That was for reference pictures. Maddie wanted to see how the room might look. The explanation might have worked if I had not been holding an invoice from her restaurant company. I did not confront her with it. Not yet. Did you tell Maddie she was getting that room? I asked. I said it might happen. You wrote her name on a floor plan. Mom wrote that. Did you correct her? Courtney exhaled. Why are you interrogating me over a bedroom you barely use? There it was. Not an answer, but a claim disguised as a question. I'll speak with you later, I said. Nicole, don't turn this into something ugly before Christmas. I haven't turned it into anything. I ended the call before she could redefine the conversation. 10 minutes later, a text arrived from Evan. Can you meet me today? I need to ask you something about Courtney. Not over the phone. Evan and I were not close, but we had known each other for 13 years. He was steady, private, and usually careful not to involve himself in conflicts between the sisters. I checked my calendar. He suggested a coffee shop near Daly Center at 1:30. I had a client call scheduled from my office in the Loop that morning, so the location was practical. I told him I would meet him there. Traffic from Gold Coast to the Loop took nearly half an hour because freezing rain had slowed every intersection. By the time I reached my office, The shoulders of my coat were damp, and the sidewalks had turned the color of dirty glass. I completed the client call, forwarded the inspection invoice to my attorney, Dana Ruiz, and left for the cafe with enough time to walk. The coffee shop sat on the ground floor of an office building across from the plaza. As I entered through the side lobby, I saw Evan coming out of an elevator. Behind him, a directory listed several law practices. One of them specialized in divorce, parenting agreements, and marital assets. Evan stopped when he saw me looking at it. "I can explain," he said. "I didn't ask yet." He glanced toward the cafe. "Can we sit down?" We chose a table near the back. Evan removed his gloves but kept turning one of them between his hands. He looked tired. There were deep shadows beneath his eyes, and the collar of his coat had been buttoned incorrectly. "What did you need to ask me?" I said. He looked toward the windows before answering. "Has Courtney asked you for money?" "No." "Has your mother?" "No." "What about property?" I watched his face. "Why?" "I need to know whether they've involved you in anything connected to the restaurant." "That depends on what you mean by involved." Evan rubbed his thumb over a seam in the glove. "Courtney told me you were helping." "With what?" "She didn't say. She said there were family resources available and I should stop panicking." "Panicking about what?" He leaned back. "I can't discuss all of it yet. You asked me here." "I know. I'm trying to find out what she committed to without telling me." "Did she commit my penthouse?" His eyes moved to mine. The reaction was real. Not guilt. Alarm. "What are you talking about?" "Courtney has been inside my home with a photographer. My parents brought in an appraiser. Her restaurant company received an inspection invoice using my address." Evan's face tightened. "She told me your parents owned that apartment." "They don't. I thought it belonged to all of you somehow." "It belongs to me. My ex-husband signed away his interest during our divorce. My parents have guest cards." He sat very still. "Did you authorize an appraisal?" he asked. "No." "Did you agree to guarantee a loan?" "No." His eyes closed briefly. "Then I have a larger problem than I thought." "What problem?" "I found transfers from our joint account to the restaurant. Courtney said they were temporary. Then I found notices from 2 lenders I'd never heard of." "Did you sign anything?" "Not knowingly." "That isn't an answer." "No, I did not sign a new business guarantee." "Then why are you meeting a family lawyer?" His expression hardened, not at me, but at the question itself. "Because I have 2 children, and I don't know how much debt my wife has hidden." That explanation was believable. It was not complete. "Are you leaving her?" I asked. "I'm trying to understand what I would be protecting the kids from." "There's a difference. Does Courtney know you're here?" "No, and I need it to stay that way for now." I did not promise secrecy beyond what concerned me. "I won't call her to report this conversation, but if something touches my property, I'll act." "I understand. Do you know the name of the lender?" He shook his head. I saw partial descriptions on withdrawals, nothing clear. I wrote down the names he remembered. Neither matched the company on the invoice. When we stood to leave, Evan said, "Courtney keeps saying the family will fix everything after Christmas." "What does that mean?" "I was hoping you could tell me." I left the cafe with more information and less certainty. Evan was hiding something, but secrecy did not make him responsible for the appraisal. He might have been protecting assets, preparing a separation, or trying to understand debts Courtney had concealed. Any of those possibilities made him relevant. None made him guilty. Sarah called while I was waiting for my car in the parking garage. "You sound like you're in a tunnel," she said. "Concrete garage. Close enough. How did the meeting go?" I told her about the family law office and Evan's questions. "So now you think he arranged the appraisal?" she asked. "I think he knows the restaurant is in trouble." "That wasn't my question." "I don't know who arranged it." "Good." I unlocked my car but stayed beside it. "Why is that good?" "Because yesterday you wanted a simple explanation. Today you have several complicated ones. Don't choose the person acting most suspicious and call the problem solved." He's meeting a divorce lawyer without telling Courtney. That means he has a secret. It doesn't tell you the secret caused yours. I rested my hand on the cold roof of the car. Part of me wants this to be Evan. Why? Because then Dad might have brought the appraiser in without understanding what it was. Sarah did not answer immediately. "You're searching for a version where your father is careless instead of involved," she said. The words landed because they were accurate. I'm not ready to decide what he did. You don't have to decide. You have to verify. She asked what I would tell a client if a valuation professional entered an asset without confirmed owner authorization. I'd tell them to contact the appraiser, confirm the commissioning party, notify counsel, and preserve access records. Then do that. After the call, I returned to the Penthouse and contacted the appraisal company using the number on its public website, not the invoice. I identified myself as the recorded owner and provided the reference number. The receptionist transferred me to a manager after verifying my name against public title records. The manager was cautious. He would not provide the loan amount, borrower information, or the contents of the lender's file. He did confirm that the inspection had been commissioned through a private financial institution. Did your appraiser receive authorization from me? I asked. Our engagement came through the lender, he said. We were told access had been approved by the owner's family representative. I have no family representative authorized to order an appraisal. There was a pause. I'm going to escalate that internally, he said. Please preserve all records connected to the visit. I can note your request, but your attorney may need to contact the lender directly. I gave him Dana's information. Less than an hour later, Dana called. I received the invoice, she said. Do not contact your parents yet. I wasn't planning to. Good. The appraisal company gave me the lender's fraud and compliance contact. They're reviewing the file. Can they tell us who applied? Only what they are legally permitted to disclose. Right now, our focus is anything using your identity, signature, address, or ownership interest. What happens if someone tried to use my penthouse as collateral? If you didn't sign a deed or mortgage document, they cannot simply create a valid lien. But we need to know what representations were made. Should I disable the guest cards? Restrict professional access immediately. We can decide about the cards once we understand the timeline. I already did. Good. She sounded unsurprised. Dana had represented me during part of my divorce and knew I did not wait well when property records were involved. At 5:47, an email arrived from the lender's fraud and compliance counsel. The message explained that a title search had identified me as the recorded owner of the Penthouse. The institution was reviewing a proposed bridge loan connected to Barrett Sloan Hospitality Group. Certain documents in the preliminary file represented that I had consented to an appraisal and intended to transfer the property to Courtney. The email did not include Courtney's financial statements or the proposed loan amount. Those sections were redacted. It included only the pages necessary to verify my name, address, ownership, and purported consent. The attorney asked me to review one document and confirm whether I had signed it. The title read, Owner Consent to Appraisal and Preliminary Transfer Authorization. My name appeared throughout the first page. The language said, I approved valuation access and intended to transfer the penthouse to my sister before closing. It was not a deed. It could not transfer ownership by itself, but it explained why an appraiser had been allowed to walk through my home and why a lender believed a real transaction was coming. I scrolled to the final page. My name was typed beneath the signature. The signature itself looked exactly like mine. Dana called me before I could answer the lender's email. Do not reply from your phone, she said. Open your laptop, save the original message, and download the attachment without changing the file name. I carried the computer to the kitchen table. Outside, freezing rain had turned to snow, softening the roofs below while traffic crawled along Lake Shore Drive. The penthouse was quiet enough for me to hear the refrigerator motorcycle on behind me. I'm looking at it, I said. Read the title aloud. Owner Consent to Appraisal and Preliminary Transfer Authorization. And what does it claim you agreed to? I read the operative paragraphs. The document said I had approved access for valuation purposes and intended to transfer my ownership interest in the penthouse to Courtney before the lender's closing. It authorized preparation of preliminary loan documents based on that intended gift. It is not a deed, Dana said when I finished. It does not transfer title. It does not create a valid mortgage. The lender would still need a properly executed deed, title insurance, and your direct signature on the closing documents. So they cannot take my home with this. No, but they used it to make a proposed transaction look real enough for the lender to spend money and keep reviewing the file. I looked again at my signature. It sat beneath a statement I had never read, much less approved. Why would they risk using this if they still needed me? I asked. Because it bought them time. It allowed the appraisal to happen. It may also have allowed them to tell themselves the final signature was only a formality. Christmas was no longer a family celebration that had been hijacked by entitlement. It was the final pressure point in a transaction that could not close without me. Dana dictated a short written denial. I stated that I had never signed or authorized the document, never approved an appraisal, never promised to transfer the penthouse, and never consented to using it in connection with Barrett Sloan Hospitality Group. I sent it from my laptop with Dana copied. The lender's fraud counsel acknowledged it within minutes. The file was frozen immediately. No closing could proceed, no additional third party could access the property, and all records connected to the proposed transaction would be preserved. That should have made me feel safe. Instead, it clarified how deliberate the plan had been. Dana stayed on the phone while I checked the county recorder's records and called my title company. There was no new deed, mortgage, lien, or pending instrument attached to the penthouse. My recorded ownership remained unchanged. Next, I placed fraud alerts on my credit files and reviewed recent inquiries. Nothing suggested anyone had opened a personal account in my name. I checked the small rental property my company owned, then the accounts connected to my business. No unfamiliar filings appeared. Leah updated the access rules for my unit. My parents' guest cards could still bring them to the residential floor for the planned Christmas gathering. But they could no longer sponsor professional visitors. Any appraiser, contractor, mover, photographer, financial representative, or delivery involving furniture required my direct approval. I also requested that every existing access record and hallway clip connected to the recent visits be retained. By noon, the immediate danger had been contained. That did not answer the question sitting beneath my name on the false document. Where had the signature come from? I signed my name hundreds of times a year, but no two signatures were exactly identical. The angle changed. The final stroke sometimes rose, sometimes flattened. The pressure varied depending on the pen and surface. The signature on the authorization looked perfect, too perfect. I printed it and placed 3 recent signed documents beside it. Dana joined me by video call and asked me to enlarge the scanned image. The edges around the signature are slightly softer than the typed text, she said. That may mean it was inserted as an image. A forensic examiner can determine more later. I held the pages beneath the kitchen light. The forged signature was not an imitation drawn by someone practicing my name. It was mine, lifted whole from somewhere else. I opened the safe in my bedroom and carried the old Homeowners Association file back to the table. The first few pages were ordinary: emergency contacts, insurance details, an authorization for package delivery. Then I reached the owner registration form I had completed 6 years earlier. My signature at the bottom matched the one on the false authorization down to the smallest defect, including a tiny break in the first stroke where the pen had skipped across glossy paper. I did not need an expert to tell me they came from the same image. The kitchen around me seemed to lose its warmth. I set both pages flat and took photographs before touching anything else. 6 years earlier, I had been in Denver when the building requested an updated original form within 48 hours. My father had just undergone knee surgery and was staying at the penthouse with my mother because the elevator and one-level layout made recovery easier than the stairs in their old house. I had emailed George the completed form from my hotel. He printed it, asked me to sign the final page electronically, then scanned and sent the packet to management for me. At the time, he had helped exactly as I asked. That was also when I authorized 2 guest keycards for my parents. The cards were meant to make a temporary recovery easier. They became permanent because I never saw a reason to take them back. George had kept the scanned file. The realization did not transform every memory of my father into a lie. He had driven me to college, taught me to compare mortgage rates, and sat beside me in the courthouse hallway during my divorce. He had also taken a signature I trusted him to handle and attached it to a document designed to get around my refusal before I had even been asked. Both things could be true. That was what made the evidence harder to hold. I sent Dana the comparison and placed the originals in separate sleeves. She told me not to confront anyone until the lender confirmed the upload trail. At 2:30, Evan texted asking whether I could speak. I told him to meet me in the cafe inside my office building. I chose the location because it was public, close to Dana's office, and nowhere near Courtney's restaurants. Evan arrived without his usual briefcase. He looked as though he had not slept. "I should have told you more yesterday," he said after we sat down. "Yes," I said. "I met the lawyer because I found nearly $80,000 missing from our joint savings over the last 7 months. Courtney moved it into the restaurant in smaller transfers." "Did you approve any of them?" "Not the later ones. She had access to the account, but we had agreed that anything over $5,000 required both of us to discuss it. That is a marital problem." "Why did you ask whether I was helping?" "Because when I confronted her, she said there was no reason to panic. She said your family had an asset that would stabilize everything after Christmas." "Did she name the Penthouse?" "No. I assumed she meant your parents had investments I did not know about. My parents do not own the Penthouse." "I understand that now." I watched him carefully. "Did you arrange the appraisal?" "No," he said. "Did you speak with the private lender?" "No. I did not know there was a bridge loan application until you told me yesterday." "Did you sign a guarantee?" "No," he repeated. His answers were direct. That did not make him completely innocent of every financial decision in his marriage, but it removed him from the center of my problem. "I am not filing for divorce this week," he said. "I spoke with counsel because I needed to understand how to protect Maddie and Owen if the debt is worse than Courtney admits. I want financial separation and full disclosure before I decide anything else. You should not rely on information from me to build a case against her. I'm not asking you to. I can confirm one thing. I never promised to transfer my penthouse, and I never agreed to use it for the restaurant." He lowered his eyes. "Then she lied to me. I do not know exactly what she believed at the beginning. I know what is in writing now. I did not show him the authorization, the signature comparison, or the lender's email. Those records belonged with Dana and the fraud review, not in a private marital argument." Before we left, Evan said, "Whatever happens, please do not let Maddie think she caused this because she wanted that room." "I won't," I said. His concern sounded sincere. It also reminded me that the adults had already placed a child inside a promise they had no right to make. Back upstairs, I found 3 missed calls from my father. Dana called before I returned them. "The lender confirmed what they can disclose at this stage," she said. "The authorization was uploaded through an account using George Barrett's email address. He was listed as the contact for the proposed family gift." I closed my eyes briefly. "Do they have metadata?" "They preserve the original file and upload records. Full metadata will be handled through the forensic review and any formal disclosure process. Right now, they have given us only what is necessary to verify the unauthorized use of your identity and ownership. So we have the old signature, his account, and his role as the contact. Yes, enough to know this did not come from Evan or a random broker." My phone vibrated again while she spoke. George did not call a 4th time. He left a voicemail. His voice sounded tired and almost irritated, as though I had made a simple task unnecessarily difficult. "Nicole, call me when you get this. We need to talk about a small formality before Christmas. Your mother is worried you may misunderstand what we're trying to do." Dana heard the message through the speaker. "Do not accuse him of every fact we have," she said. "Ask one question at a time. Let him choose his own words." I saved the voicemail, forwarded it to her, and called my father. He answered immediately. "Finally," he said, "can you come by the condo tonight?" "No, I have one question first." He went silent. "Did you send a document called Owner Consent to Appraisal and Preliminary Transfer Authorization to a private lender?" His breath moved against the receiver. "Nicole, there is context. That was not my question." Another pause followed, longer this time. "It wasn't supposed to become real until you signed the deed." "It wasn't supposed to become real until you signed the deed." My father said it as though the sentence reduced what he had done. As though a forged authorization was harmless because there were still documents left to sign. I kept the phone against my ear and looked at the 2 signatures on my kitchen table. One was attached to an old homeowners association form. The other sat beneath language promising my penthouse to a lender. "You copied my signature onto a document you knew I had never seen," I said. "I used an existing scan to keep the file open. That is called using my signature without permission. It was a placeholder, Nicole." "A placeholder for what?" For the consent you would provide once we explained everything. You mean once 32 people were standing in my home? He inhaled slowly. This is why I asked you to come to the condo. We should not discuss it over the phone. I'm not coming to the condo. Your mother deserves to be part of this. She was part of it before I was. Another pause followed. I told him to meet me at 10 the next morning in the lounge of a hotel near Oak Park. It was quiet, public, and far enough from the penthouse that neither of my parents could behave as though they were still speaking from inside property they controlled. Before ending the call, I said, "Do not contact the lender. Do not edit, delete, or replace any document. Dana has already issued a preservation request." My father's voice hardened. You brought a lawyer into this before speaking to us? You brought a lender into it before speaking to me. I ended the call. The following morning, low clouds pressed over Chicago, turning the snow along the roads a flat gray. The drive from Gold Coast to Oak Park took almost 40 minutes through holiday traffic. I arrived early, chose a table near the back of the lounge, and placed my phone face up beside a closed notebook. George entered at 10:07. He wore the charcoal overcoat I had given him for his 65th birthday. His silver hair was damp from the snow, and for one brief second he looked older than 67. Then he saw the folder on the table, and his posture became the same controlled posture he had used through 30 years of financial meetings. He sat without ordering anything. Did you bring Mom? I asked. No, I told her I wanted to speak to you first. What did you tell the lender? That Courtney was expecting a family transfer. Did you tell them I had agreed? I told them the family had discussed it. The family discussed my property without me. We knew how you would react. That is not a defense. He folded his hands. No money has been released. No deed has been recorded. Your title is untouched. Because the lender checked public records and contacted me. And now the file is frozen, so there is no damage. I opened the folder and slid a copy of the authorization across the table. The appraiser entered my home. The lender spent money. My identity was used in a financial application. Courtney prepared rooms for her children. Mom planned to announce the transfer before asking me. Damage does not begin only when someone loses the property. George did not touch the page. The lender needed assurance, he said. They were ready to walk away. Why didn't you let them? Because Courtney's business would collapse. Then you should have asked whether I wanted to risk my home. You would have demanded every statement, every projection, every debt schedule. Yes. And you would have said no. Then you already knew my answer. His eyes moved to the windows. Snow gathered on the bare branches outside the hotel. It was not meant to be permanent, he said. The loan term was 18 months. Courtney would stabilize the restaurants, refinance, and release the penthouse. You cannot promise the release of collateral when you do not control the borrower's cash flow. I reviewed the projections. Did you review the actual numbers? He looked back at me. That was the first moment I understood he was not only hiding Courtney's situation, he was hiding his own. How much money have you given her? I asked. We invested. How much? It came from several sources. Give me the total. George pressed his lips together. Your mother and I sold the old house 18 months ago. I know. You do not know the details. They had lived in that house for nearly 28 years. When they sold it, Patricia said the stairs were becoming inconvenient, and the yard required too much work. They bought a condo in Oak Park and described the move as simplifying their retirement. How much did you clear after the mortgage and closing costs? I asked. A little over $760,000. How much did the condo cost? $310,000. We paid cash. That should have left approximately $450,000. I looked at him. You gave Courtney all of the remainder. She needed equity for the second location. You gave her $450,000. It was an investment. Do you own part of the company? We have a note and an equity interest. Is the note secured? His silence answered. How much more? I asked. Nicole, how much did you take from retirement accounts after the house money was gone? His face tightened. $240,000. For a moment, the hotel lounge continued around us as though nothing had changed. Cups touched saucers. Someone laughed near the fireplace. A waiter carried a tray of tea past our table. My parents had exposed nearly $690,000 to Courtney's restaurants. That did not include whatever George had guaranteed. How much cash do you have left? I asked. Enough. That is not a number. We still own the condo. Do you have a home equity loan on it? A small line. How small? 40,000. Pension? My pension is modest. We have Social Security. We can live comfortably if the investment recovers. And if it doesn't? He looked down at the document between us. We would have to make adjustments. The phrase was so mild that it became cruel. You sold the house, used the proceeds, withdrew retirement money, and signed guarantees for a business that now needs another $1.8 million. You are not trying to save Courtney from one bad quarter. You are trying to save your own decision. I'm trying to protect this family. You are trying to keep anyone from seeing how much you already lost. His hand moved across the table, then stopped short of the authorization. You think I don't know I made mistakes? He asked. I spent my career advising people not to chase losses. Then my daughter came to me with a business that had already succeeded once. I believed the second location would work. And when it didn't, you risked more. I could not walk away after putting that much into it. That is exactly when you should have examined whether the next dollar had any chance of returning. I knew you would say that, so you used my signature before I could. The waiter approached. George ordered coffee. I declined. When the waiter left, my father lowered his voice. Your mother wakes up at 3 a.m. checking the restaurant accounts. She thinks we will lose everything. Then why isn't she here apologizing? She is afraid. Sue and I. Of what? You still own a $5 million penthouse. Your company is doing well. You have investments. My financial stability is not permission to move your risk onto me. His expression changed at the word permission. He looked frustrated, almost offended, that I continued treating my consent as the central issue. You always make families sound contractual, he said. You made it contractual when you submitted my name to a lender. The waiter returned with his coffee. George waited until he had walked away before speaking again. There is another option, he said. I'm listening. You would not have to transfer the deed. You could provide a limited guarantee for the 18-month term. No. You have not seen the structure. I have seen the false authorization. The guarantee could be capped. We could negotiate release conditions. Based on what repayment source? Spring events, new corporate bookings, licensing revenue. Are those contracts signed? Some are being finalized. Then show me the complete financial statements, tax filings, current debt schedule, overdue rent, payroll obligations, merchant advances, investor notes, personal guarantees, and all signed bookings. He stared at me. You're treating Courtney like a hostile client. I am treating a request for a personal guarantee like a personal guarantee. You know her. I also know someone used my signature. That was me, not Courtney. Did she know I had not agreed? Before he could answer, a woman's voice came from behind me. She knew you would agree once you stopped being dramatic. Patricia removed her gloves as she approached the table. Her camel-colored coat was belted perfectly, her lipstick untouched by the weather. She placed her handbag on the empty chair and sat beside my father. You told her, George said. I told her we were meeting, Patricia replied. This concerns me too. I looked at my father. So this was never a private conversation. We should all talk, he said. Patricia reached for my hand. I moved it before she could touch me. Her expression sharpened, but her voice remained gentle. Nicole, your father made a poor decision with that form. He knows that. He has not apologized. He is frightened. Fear explains why he did it. It does not excuse it. You are focusing on the wrong injury. My signature was used on a financial document. And 84 employees may lose their jobs. Your sister may lose her home. Maddie and Owen may have to leave their school. Your father and I may lose our retirement. Yet you are acting as though the greatest tragedy is a technical error on a form. A technical error is misspelling my middle name. This was intentional. Patricia sat back. No one was stealing your penthouse. You planned to announce it belonged to Courtney before asking me. We planned to explain that the space would serve the family better. It serves me. I live there. You sleep there between flights. That apartment has 4 bedrooms and more space than one person needs. Property does not become communal because the owner is single. Her eyes narrowed. You always do that. Do what? Turn a moral question into a legal one. You turned my home into collateral. It was already a legal question. George placed one hand on her arm. Patricia, let me handle the financial side. She pulled away. The financial side is why Nicole thinks she can sit above all of us and evaluate whether we deserve help. I did not say anyone had to deserve help. You asked for statements as though your sister were a stranger. I asked for statements because Dad wants me to guarantee $1.8 million. For 18 months, George said. Against a business that already consumed nearly $700,000 of your money. Patricia's face changed. He told you? Yes. That was private. So was my signature. The waiter glanced toward us from across the room. None of us raised our voices, but the tension had begun drawing attention. Patricia leaned closer. What exactly do you want? She asked. An apology? Fine. We should have approached you differently, but now you know. Courtney needs time. Your father and I need the investment protected, and you are the only person in the family with enough financial strength to stop this from becoming a disaster. I am willing to look at the real numbers and identify a restructuring path. We do not need a consultant. You need more than another loan. We need family loyalty. No, you need collateral. Her mouth tightened. George turned his coffee cup slowly between his hands. Will you at least consider a limited guarantee? After reviewing the statements? I will review the statements if Courtney provides them. I will not promise a guarantee. Then what is the point? Patricia asked. The point is finding out whether any part of the business can survive without risking my home. That is not enough. It is what I am offering. Patricia stood and fastened her coat. Courtney was right, she said. You have already decided to let her fail. I have decided she does not get to succeed by transferring the possibility of failure to me. You will regret saying that when Maddie asks why her life changed. Do not use Maddie to deliver your argument. Patricia picked up her handbag. Christmas dinner is still happening. Yes. And the family is still coming. Yes. Her gaze held mine. Then perhaps they should hear your answer too. She walked away before I could respond. George remained seated for several seconds. He looked toward the door through which she had left. I did not want it to happen this way, he said. You chose every step that made it happen this way. He rose, left cash beneath the coffee cup, and followed her. I sat alone until the server cleared the table. The figures stayed with me during the drive back toward the city. $690,000. A paid-off condo, now carrying a small credit line. 2 retirees with limited income and almost no liquid cushion. If Courtney's business collapsed, my parents would not be destitute, but the retirement they had planned would disappear. Part of me wanted to write a check large enough to make their fear stop. That impulse frightened me more than Patricia's anger. I did not return to the penthouse. I called Sarah and asked whether I could come over. She opened the door before I reached the porch, wearing thick socks and an old university sweatshirt. Her house smelled of tomato soup and toasted bread. School papers covered one end of her dining table, and a half-decorated wreath rested on a chair. I made enough for 2, she said. You didn't know I was coming. I usually make enough for 4. Occupational habit. We sat in her kitchen while I told her about the house sale, the retirement withdrawal, the limited guarantee, and Patricia's warning about Maddie. Sarah listened without interrupting. When I finished, she pushed a bowl of soup toward me. I could guarantee something smaller, I said, enough to give them time. Do you believe the business can repay it? I haven't seen the numbers. Then why are you deciding the amount? I looked down at the steam rising from the bowl. They're scared. I'm sure they are. If I do nothing, they may lose the life they planned. If you sign, what might you lose? I have more room. That wasn't my question. I rubbed my thumb against the edge of the spoon. Part of me wants to pay, just so they stop being afraid. Sarah's expression softened. Are you trying to help them? She asked. Or are you trying to make them stop being angry with you? I could not answer. She did not force me to. Look at the numbers, she said. Decide what can actually survive. But don't confuse calming them down with solving the problem. My laptop chimed from the chair beside me. Dana had forwarded a new message from the Lenders Fraud Council. The attachment contained only 2 redacted excerpts, both limited to whether I had consented to the proposed transfer. 3 weeks earlier, the lender had asked Courtney to obtain direct confirmation from me before the file could advance. Courtney had replied that I became emotional around holidays, but always did what was best for the family. The second line was shorter. We will finalize her signature after Christmas dinner. I read it twice. Until then, I had allowed for the possibility that Courtney had believed our parents when they claimed I had already agreed. The email removed that possibility. She knew the lender still needed my signature. She knew I had never provided it. She had still brought a photographer into my home, planned Maddie's bedroom, and waited for Christmas to make refusal more painful. Dana's note beneath the excerpt reminded me that the lender was providing only material necessary to verify the unauthorized claim of consent. The complete email chain would require formal disclosure later. I closed the laptop. Sarah watched me across the table. "What did you find?" My sister knew. My phone lit up before I could explain further. Courtney's message arrived while I was still sitting at Sarah's kitchen table. "Mom says you found out. Meet me at the restaurant tomorrow. Come alone if you actually want to save this family." Sarah read my face before I handed her the phone. "She made the meeting a loyalty test," she said. "She always does. Are you going?" "Yes." "Because she ordered you to?" "Because I want to hear what she says when Mom and Dad aren't speaking for her." Sarah returned the phone. "Then listen. You don't have to defend every decision you've made since childhood." The next evening, 3 days before Christmas, I drove to Courtney's second restaurant in the West Loop. The streets were wet and dark, with old snow pressed into gray ridges along the curbs. Office workers hurried beneath umbrellas, while holiday lights glowed above nearly empty sidewalks. Courtney's restaurant occupied the ground floor of a renovated brick warehouse. Brass letters framed the entrance. Tall windows revealed amber lighting, white tablecloths, and floral arrangements designed to look effortless. It was 6:30, a time Courtney had once described as the beginning of their nightly rush. More than half the tables were empty. A hostess stood behind the reservation desk with a smile that appeared the moment I entered and disappeared when she looked down at the seating chart. 2 servers waited near the bar, polishing glasses that were already clean. A bartender cut citrus with slow, careful movements. The room was beautiful. Every surface suggested success. Nothing in it suggested enough customers to pay for that success. Courtney came toward me in a dark green dress and low heels. Her hair was pinned back, and she wore the calm expression she used when meeting investors. "You came," she said. "You asked me to." She leaned forward as if to hug me, then stopped when I did not move. "We should talk somewhere private." She led me past the dining room into a small room used for private tastings. The table had been set for 2, though I had not agreed to dinner. A bottle of wine sat in a silver cooler beside plates of bread and olives. "I'm not hungry," I said. "You flew in yesterday. You need to eat." "I came to talk." Her mouth tightened. "You always have to make everything feel like a meeting. You asked me here because you want access to a $5 million property. I asked you here because you're my sister. Then we should begin with the truth." Courtney sat across from me. For several seconds, she studied the candle between us. "Do you remember the apartment over Dad's first office?" she asked. I did. Before my father moved into corporate finance, he had worked for a small manufacturing company in Rockford. For 1 year, when I was 9 and Courtney was 4, our family lived above a row of offices near the factory. "You used to make tents in our bedroom," she continued. "You tied blankets to the furniture and told me nobody could come in unless we invited them. I remember. You made everything feel safe." The memory was real. So was the reason she had chosen it. "You did not invite me here to talk about blanket tents." "Maybe I wanted to remember when you acted like my sister instead of my auditor." "I am acting like your sister. An auditor would be billing you." She looked away. "That's exactly what I mean." "What do you mean?" "You can always turn feelings into numbers. It's easy for you." "It isn't easy. It's necessary when you are asking me to secure your debt." Courtney reached for the wine but did not pour it. "You left as soon as you could. College, New York, Chicago, the consulting firm. Every time this family became difficult, you had somewhere else to be. I built a life. I stayed. You chose to stay. I stayed near Mom and Dad. I gave them grandchildren. I hosted birthdays and Sunday dinners. I kept everyone connected while you sent flowers and arrived when your calendar allowed." There was enough truth in her words to make them sting. I had missed dinners. I had left early when Patricia began comparing us. After my divorce, I had buried myself in work because client problems came with contracts, deadlines, and defined responsibilities. But Courtney was turning presence into ownership. I know you carried things I didn't, I said. That doesn't give you my home. To you, it's an asset. It is also where I live. You're gone half the month. I could be gone 11 months of the year and it would still belong to me. She pressed her hands together. Maddie and Owen share a bathroom. Evan works from the dining room. Mom and Dad are terrified about money. I have 84 employees whose families depend on these restaurants. You have rooms no one uses. My guest room is not a business rescue plan. It could be. You knew I had not agreed. Her eyes moved toward the door. The lender contacted you, I said. They asked for direct confirmation 3 weeks ago. Mom said she was handling it. You replied that I became emotional around the holidays and would do what was best for the family. Courtney did not ask how I knew. That told me the excerpt was genuine. I was trying to keep the application alive, she said, with a false statement about me. I believed you would help once you understood what was at stake. Then why didn't you show me what was at stake? Because you would have said no before hearing the whole story. That is what Dad said about using my signature. Her face changed. He should not have done that. But you continued after you knew I had not consented. I did not forge anything. You let them build a closing around a signature you knew they still needed to obtain under pressure. That isn't how I saw it. How did you see it? As buying time. The same phrase, polished into a different shape. I leaned back. Show me the numbers. Courtney frowned. What? You said I don't understand what is at stake. Show me. This is a private company. You are asking to use my penthouse as collateral. Your privacy ended where my title began. She looked toward the candle again. The reports aren't here. You know the major figures. I know estimates. Start with rent. She said nothing. How much is overdue at this location? We are negotiating. How much? Just over 3 months. What is the monthly rent? Her jaw tightened. $42,000. That placed overdue base rent above $120,000 before common area charges, taxes, late fees, or legal costs. What about the equipment financing? Current. For how long? Nicole. For how long? 1 payment. And after that? We need the bridge facility. How much short-term debt is outstanding? She reached for the wine again, then withdrew her hand. A little over $900,000. Separate from what you owe Mom and Dad? Yes. Separate from unpaid rent? Yes. Separate from vendor balances? She looked at me. How much? About $300,000, but not all of it is due now. How much cash is available? That changes daily. How much was available this morning? About $64,000. I looked through the glass wall toward the half-empty dining room. $64,000 would not cover 2 months of rent, much less payroll, vendors, taxes, and debt service. How much money is the first location sending here? It isn't sending money. Courtney, we centralize expenses. That means the profitable location is covering this one. We are one company. That does not change the cash flow. Her voice sharpened. The first restaurant would not have its reputation without this expansion. The first restaurant had its reputation before this place existed. You want me to admit the second location was a mistake. I want to know what can still survive. She folded her arms. The lender believes we can stabilize within 18 months. The lender believes it will have low-risk collateral worth far more than the loan. That is not the same as believing the restaurant can repay. It is a bridge loan. A bridge connects 2 stable pieces of ground. What is waiting on the other side? Spring bookings, corporate events, a licensing deal. Signed? Under discussion. How much does the proposed loan cover? $1.8 million? For how long? 18 months with an extension. At what rate? She did not answer immediately. Courtney, 14% plus fees. The annual interest alone would exceed $250,000. That did not include principal payments, origination charges, appraisal expenses, legal fees, or any extension penalty. And the penthouse would secure all of it. It would secure the facility temporarily. There is no temporary lien when the borrower cannot pay. Her eyes flashed. We would pay. From what cash? She pushed her chair back. You came here wanting to prove this was impossible. No. I came here wanting the truth. You enjoy this? The accusation was so far from what I felt that it almost calmed me. I do not enjoy seeing your restaurant empty 3 days before Christmas, I said. I do not enjoy knowing Mom and Dad risked nearly $700,000. I do not enjoy learning. My sister knew strangers were valuing my home without my permission. Then help us. I am trying to. You call this helping? Yes. Close this location. Courtney stared at me. Negotiate an early lease termination, I continued. Offer the landlord equipment, fixtures, or a structured payment rather than forcing them into a longer default. Sell what can be moved. Stop using the first restaurant's cash to hide this one's losses. You think I can walk away from millions invested here? That money is already spent. I have employees. Some will lose jobs whether you close now or run out of payroll later. Give them notice, references, and whatever severance the company can afford. You make it sound so clean. It won't be clean. What else? Sell the house. She gave a short, disbelieving laugh. My children live there. They can live in a smaller house. You and Evan bought beyond what your current income supports. You don't know anything about my marriage. I know Evan discovered money missing from your joint savings. Courtney's face drained of expression. He talked to you. He asked whether I had agreed to support the restaurant. I told him I had not. You had no right. He had a right to know my property was not available to cover debts he did not understand. He is already looking for reasons to leave. He is looking for information. You always take the outsider's side. Evan is your husband, not an outsider. She looked toward the dining room, where a server was setting a third table for guests who had not yet arrived. I lowered my voice. Protect the first restaurant. Sell this location's assets. Sell the house by agreement with Evan. Bring in an independent turnaround specialist who has no loyalty to you, me, or mom and dad. I will give you 3 names. I will not pay them, guarantee a loan, or put my penthouse at risk. Courtney's eyes hardened. So your grand act of generosity is a referral. My offer is a path that does not require stealing control of my property. It requires me to announce that I failed. It requires you to stop making the failure larger. You don't understand what happens if I close this place. Every article about the opening will come back. Every person who said I expanded too fast will celebrate. I won't. You won't need to. Everyone will know you were right. This is not about who was right. It is about what still has a chance to survive. Courtney pressed both hands against the table. You have never had to fail in front of mom and dad. I thought of my divorce, my mother's relief that no children were involved, and the Christmas party Patricia requested at the Penthouse 2 weeks later because Courtney needed cheering up. I have failed, I said. I just learned not to ask them to make someone else pay for it. Courtney stood and walked to the glass wall. Beyond her, the dining room glowed like a stage waiting for an audience. If this closes, mom and dad lose everything they put in, she said. They may already have. Dad signed guarantees. How much? I don't know the exact number. You know enough to be afraid. She turned toward me. The $1.8 million loan gives us time to refinance other obligations. Other obligations? Her silence answered before she did. How much more? I asked. There is a merchant cash advance. I waited. And a private note from an investor. How much? Together, around $700,000. The number settled between us. The proposed bridge loan was not a rescue. It was another layer placed over more than $2 million in existing obligations, overdue rent, vendor balances, and family money. The bridge facility would last a few months, I said. It would get us through spring. Then what? We would be in a stronger position, based on unsigned bookings and a licensing discussion. You make every possibility sound foolish. No, I separate possibilities from money already due. Courtney returned to the table. Her voice softened, which made the next words more deliberate. If you refuse, Maddie is going to know. Know what? That her aunt chose an empty apartment over her family. I looked at my sister and understood that she had brought Maddie into the room long before she wrote the child's name on a floor plan. You promised her something that was not yours. She saw future. She saw a bedroom. She saw space. Stability. A place where she could bring friends without hearing us argue about money. Then you should tell her the truth about why that promise cannot happen. You want me to tell a 12-year-old that her aunt could have saved us and chose not to? Children are not invoices you can send to me. Courtney's mouth tightened. I will not let you use Maddie to collect a debt I never owed, I continued. I will help you find a professional who may save the part of the business that still works. That is my offer. It isn't enough. It is the only offer that belongs to me." She sat down again, but the conversation had already ended. "Christmas is still happening at the Penthouse," she said. "I know. Everyone has been invited. I know that too. They're expecting an announcement. Then you should change their expectations." Courtney shook her head. "Mom won't. That is her decision. You think you can stand in front of everyone and say no? I already said no here. That room will be different." I put on my coat. "My answer won't be." As I walked through the dining room, 4 new guests entered. The hostess greeted them with visible relief. A server straightened his shoulders and hurried toward their table. The restaurant remained beautiful. It remained open. For 3 more nights, it could still pretend those facts meant it was healthy. My phone vibrated as I reached the sidewalk. Dana had forwarded a redacted excerpt from the Lenders Fraud Council. The disclosure was limited to language directly concerning my supposed consent. Patricia had written the message 6 days earlier. "Christmas dinner will put Nicole in a room where saying no is no longer possible." Patricia's sentence glowed on my laptop screen while snowplows scraped the street below. The penthouse smelled of cinnamon wax and cold pine from the garland she had wrapped around my staircase. Somewhere inside the wall, the heating pipes knocked twice, then went quiet. The excerpt had been released by the Lenders Fraud Council because it referred directly to my supposed consent. Everything unrelated to my name and property remained redacted. Even with half the page covered in black bars, my mother's intention was clear. She had not expected me to agree after hearing Courtney's numbers. She had expected an audience to make disagreement painful. I saved the file in the evidence folder Dana had created and printed 1 copy for my records. When I opened the buffet drawer to find a clip, I saw a stack of seating charts beneath the holiday napkins. My mother had used my printer the week before to prepare the Christmas party. The top sheet listed all 32 guests by table and dietary preference. The second copy was covered with her handwriting. Beside Aunt Linda's name, she had written, "Courtney helped her son get catering work." Beside the Marshalls. "Their daughter is close to Maddie." Beside one of my father's old colleagues. "Respects George. Will explain family responsibility." Next to 3 relatives who had heard about my divorce, she had written versions of the same phrase. "Nicole is strong enough." At the bottom of the page, circled twice, were 4 words. "Help Nicole see reason." I photographed every page before placing the originals in separate sleeves. Most of the people on that list were not conspirators. They believed they had been invited to Christmas dinner. Patricia had selected them because she knew which obligation each person could press against me once the announcement was made. She had built a jury without telling the jurors there would be a trial. Dana arrived at my office in the Loop just before noon. Traffic from Gold Coast had taken almost 30 minutes despite the short distance, and sleet shone on the shoulders of her black coat when she entered the conference room. She reviewed the guest list without changing expression. "This supports a coercion theory in the civil matter," she said. "It also explains why she chose the holiday. Keep the original exactly as you found it. I already sleeved it." "Good." She opened her laptop and walked me through the protections already in place. The lender had frozen the bridge loan file. Its fraud team had issued a preservation hold covering the authorization, upload records, appraiser engagement, closing communications, and any messages concerning my consent. The title company had confirmed there was no new lien, deed, mortgage, or pending recording against the Penthouse. The lender had not accused my family in its notice. It had sent a neutral statement that the transaction could not proceed without my direct, verified consent and properly executed closing documents. "I don't want them warned about every piece we have," I said. "We are not hiding the freeze," Dana replied. "We are also not giving them a map of the evidence. The purpose is to stop the transaction and preserve what already happened, not tempt anyone into doing more." "Can they replace the file with a new lender?" "Not using your property lawfully. Your title is flagged with the title company. The building has restricted professional access, and any legitimate lender will verify ownership. Keep monitoring your credit and recorder alerts, but the immediate risk is contained." She turned the screen toward me. A current title report showed my name as owner. the recorded quitclaim from my divorce, and the remaining mortgage balance. Nothing else appeared. For the first time since I had seen the false signature, I could separate two facts. My home was safe. My family's plan was still real. After Dana left, I met Leah in the management office. She had already prepared the guest access schedule for Christmas. "I can deactivate Patricia and George's cards now," she said. "There is no occupancy issue. They are guests, and you can revoke access whenever you choose. I want them active through the end of the party." Leah looked at me carefully. "You are certain? The guests have been planning this for months. Some are coming from outside the city. I don't want children standing in the lobby because my parents discover their cards no longer work. We can have staff admit invited guests under your event list without keeping those cards active." "I know, but I want the cards returned in the room where my parents intend to transfer them. That is your decision. From a security perspective, I'll schedule automatic deactivation for 10:30 Christmas night. You can move it earlier from the owner portal." She added a note that neither card could sponsor a professional visitor. Movers, contractors, photographers, appraisers, notaries, and furniture deliveries required direct confirmation from me. I also asked her to document one more rule. No luggage, boxes, or personal property could be moved beyond the foyer without my approval. Back upstairs, I locked my office, moved the HOA folder and original records into the safe, and placed tamper-evident strips across the filing drawers. I was not preparing for a burglary. I was removing every opportunity for someone to claim they had misunderstood what they could access. Sarah came over that evening with 2 containers of soup and a loaf of bread. She noticed the seating charts on the kitchen table before she removed her coat. "You found the audience plan," she said. "My mother labeled people by how they could pressure me." Sarah read the annotations and set the paper down. "Are you still holding the party?" "Yes." "Tell me why." It was not a challenge. She wanted me to hear my own reasoning before I stepped into a room designed to distort it. "If I cancel now, Mom will tell everyone I destroyed Christmas because I resent Courtney," I said. "The children will be disappointed, and 30 innocent guests will receive a version of this where I punish them for something they never knew about. That explains why you don't want to cancel. It doesn't explain why you want the confrontation there. Because that is where she plans to announce the lie. I'm not going to chase 32 people afterward and correct it one phone call at a time. The loan is frozen. The title is safe. I can let her speak, then correct the record with the deed." Sarah folded her hands around a mug. "And if they start calling you selfish? I will not debate my need for 4 bedrooms. I will state who owns the property, that I never consented to transfer it, and that my signature was used without authorization. And Maddie? She won't be made responsible for any of it." Sarah nodded. "Then I'll come as your guest. I don't need protection." "I know. I'm not coming to fight your family. I'm coming so you don't have to walk back into an empty kitchen after everyone leaves." I accepted without pretending I preferred to be alone. The next afternoon, 2 days before Christmas, Patricia and Courtney arrived to finish decorating. They came through the elevator carrying wreath boxes, floral containers, and 3 pieces of luggage. Maddie's pink overnight bag sat on top of a small rolling suitcase. Owen's name was stitched across a navy duffel. Courtney also carried 2 framed family photographs and a pillow shaped like a basketball. I stepped between the luggage and the hallway. "What is all this?" I asked. Patricia continued removing her gloves. "The children's things. For Christmas dinner? For afterward. They should feel settled before the paperwork catches up." Courtney avoided my eyes. "It's only a few nights' worth. No one is staying here." Patricia sighed. "Nicole, we are not restarting the argument in the foyer. There is no argument. The lender froze the file, I denied the authorization, and no transfer is happening." Her face tightened for half a second before she smoothed it again. "Then the children can still sleep here after a late dinner. They were not invited to sleep here. Maddie already chose her room. You promised her a room that wasn't yours." Courtney set the frames on the console. "Don't say that where she can hear you. She isn't here. She will be on Christmas. Then tell her before Christmas that no room was ever transferred to her." Patricia picked up the pink bag. "We are putting these away. Guests do not need to trip over luggage." I blocked the hallway again. "All bags stay zipped in the entry closet. The photographs remain wrapped. Nothing goes into a bedroom, no drawer is opened, and no room is reassigned. You're being theatrical, Patricia said. I'm being explicit because subtle boundaries have not worked. Courtney looked toward the elevator. Fine. We'll leave them in the closet. And they leave with you Christmas night. My mother gave a brittle laugh. You cannot control every detail forever. I can control what enters my home. I opened the entry closet myself. Courtney placed the bags inside without unzipping them. I asked Leah to note the items and my instructions in the building log, then photographed the closed closet door. Patricia spent the next hour arranging flowers as if she had not just attempted to move children's belongings past me. She shifted candles, corrected the caterer's place settings, and referred twice to our Christmas tradition. I did not argue over the wording. The deed would answer it soon enough. That evening, Dana called with another limited disclosure from the lender's fraud counsel. The file listed December 27th as the intended closing date, she said. George represented that the deed would be signed after Christmas dinner. He told them I would sign in my home? Yes. There is also a note that someone asked whether a mobile notary could attend the Penthouse Christmas night. Was one actually booked? The records we have do not confirm a completed booking. The inquiry is preserved. Fraud counsel is sending only the pages that refer to your signature and the timing of the proposed consent. The next morning, Christmas Eve, I drove to Dana's office. The sky was clear but colorless, and salt crackled beneath my boots as I crossed the sidewalk. Dana handed me a rigid document envelope. Inside was a certified copy of my recorded deed, the recorded quitclaim deed my former husband had signed after our divorce, and a fresh title confirmation showing no new encumbrance. Keep the originals secured, she said. Use the certified copies at the party. Do not hand them over. Do not let anyone write on them. She also gave me the signature pages and timing notes the lender was legally able to provide for verification. I read them at her conference table. The proposed closing packet had a tab beside every place my signature was required. The deed transfer page remained blank. So did the mortgage and identity certification pages. The transaction had never been complete, but someone had prepared it as though my agreement were scheduled rather than uncertain. On the signature page for the deed, a yellow sticky note had been scanned with the packet. The handwriting belonged to my father. It contained 3 words. After the toast. Christmas morning arrived beneath a pale sky that made Lake Michigan look almost white beyond the windows. The glass was cold against my fingertips when I checked the seals near the balcony doors, while the scent of pine garland and orange peel drifted through the living room. Every few minutes, the private elevator sounded behind the foyer wall as catering staff brought up trays, linens, and cases of glassware. Sarah arrived shortly after 9 carrying coffee, a bakery box, and no advice I had not requested. She placed the drinks on the kitchen island and watched me check the rigid envelope inside my office safe. Is the deed still there? She asked. Yes. And the title confirmation? With it. Then stop checking every 6 minutes. It has been at least 10. Sarah looked at the clock. It has been 4. I closed the safe and entered the code again. Inside the envelope were the certified copy of my recorded deed, the recorded quitclaim from my divorce, and the current title report showing no new lien or transfer. I had also placed a copy of the false authorization in a separate folder, though Dana had advised me not to distribute documents during the party. The lender's file was frozen. The December 27th closing could not happen. Professional access to the penthouse required my approval, and my parents' guest cards were scheduled to deactivate at 10:30 that night. Nothing anyone said at dinner could change ownership. That did not mean their words were harmless. Sarah opened the bakery box. What do you want me to do if things become ugly? Stay out of the argument. I was planning to. Stay after everyone leaves. I was also planning to do that. I looked toward the dining room, where staff were laying 32 place settings beneath the chandelier. And if I start answering every accusation, I said, remind me to breathe before I speak. How? Look at me. That's all? That's enough. Sarah handed me a cup. Then that is what I'll do. My mother arrived at 11:15, 45 minutes earlier than the time I had given her. Patricia stepped from the elevator in a burgundy wool coat, followed by George carrying 3 garment bags and a square box wrapped in gold paper. She did not greet me before walking into the dining room. The white flowers should be on the side tables, she told the catering supervisor. The red arrangements belong near the windows. The supervisor glanced at me. Keep the setup we approved yesterday, I said. Patricia turned. The red will photograph better against the lake. The florist designed the layout for the room. I hired that florist for an event in my home. Her smile did not move. Must we begin this way? I'm not beginning anything. I'm confirming the plan. George placed the wrapped box on the console near the tree. It was the same size as the velvet keycard case I had seen him use in the cold opening of his own retirement celebration years earlier. What is in the box? I asked. A gift for Courtney, he said. What kind of gift? You'll see after dinner. His coat pocket held the outline of a plastic card. Patricia's handbag was open enough for me to see another one inside a small leather sleeve. Their 2 active guest keycards were still with them. I did not ask for the cards yet. Patricia removed her coat and inspected the dining table. Courtney will be here soon. I want a photograph of you two beside the tree before the guests arrive. There is no need. It is Christmas. That does not create a need. She moved one place card half an inch to the left. You could make today easier. I have already made it safe. Her hand stopped above the table. George looked toward us, but neither asked what I meant. They knew the loan file had been frozen. They did not know how much evidence Dana and the lender had preserved. Courtney arrived shortly before noon with Evan, Maddie, and Owen. Courtney wore a cream sweater dress beneath her coat. Evan carried a tray of desserts, while the children each held a small gift bag. Maddie hugged me first. Merry Christmas, Aunt Nicole. Merry Christmas. She looked past me toward the hallway. Can I show Owen the room? Courtney answered for me. Of course. Take your bags with you. The bags were smaller than the luggage Courtney had attempted to store 2 days earlier, but I recognized Maddie's pink overnight bag and Owen's navy duffel. I crouched enough to speak to them without making the exchange feel like a correction. Leave those by the tree for now. I need 2 experts to help me decide where the children's dessert table should go. Owen's eyes brightened. There's a children's dessert table? There will be if you help me. Maddie hesitated. Mom said I could put my things in my new room. Courtney's face tightened. I kept my attention on Maddie. No rooms are changing today, but I saved the best window table for you and Owen. The uncertainty in her expression hurt more than any accusation my mother could have made. Maddie had not invented the promise. She had believed the adults who were supposed to tell her the truth. Sarah appeared from the kitchen carrying 2 empty cake stands. I need quality control, she said. Someone has to make sure the cookies are arranged correctly. Owen followed her immediately. Maddie remained beside me for another second, then handed her overnight bag to Evan and went after him. Courtney lowered her voice. You embarrassed her. I prevented you from moving her belongings into a room that was never hers. We could have discussed this later. You had 3 weeks to discuss it with me. Evan set both bags beside the tree. They will leave with us tonight. Courtney looked at him, but he had already turned toward the kitchen. By 1:30, the elevator sounded almost continuously. Aunts, cousins, former neighbors, my father's retired colleagues, and 2 families connected to Courtney's restaurants entered carrying wine, flowers, and wrapped gifts. Coats filled the cloakroom. Wet boots darkened the foyer mat. The penthouse warmed quickly beneath the combined heat of 32 bodies, the fireplace, and the ovens. Patricia received each guest near the elevator as though she owned the residence. Welcome to our place, she told the marshals. Our Christmas in the city, she said to Aunt Linda. We finally found the perfect use for all this space, she told one of George's former colleagues. Every phrase was vague enough to sound harmless until people began approaching me. A woman I knew through Courtney touched my arm near the bar. What a generous thing you're doing for your sister. What did Courtney say I was doing? The woman blinked. She didn't tell me directly. Patricia said there would be a family announcement. A cousin congratulated me for putting the children first. Who told you there was a choice involving the children? I asked. He looked embarrassed. Your mother may have mentioned a housing change. A retired colleague of George's raised his glass toward me. Real estate is most valuable when it supports the next generation. Your father must be proud. What exactly did he tell you? The man smiled uncertainly. Only that the family had reached an arrangement. I did not correct every person immediately. I asked where the information had come from and allowed their answers to build a pattern. No one had heard the news from me. No one had seen a signed document. They had been invited to applaud a decision they believed had already been made. From across the room, Sarah caught my eye. She did not shake her head or gesture toward my parents. She simply held my gaze until I inhaled slowly and turned back to the guests. Courtney began offering tours before lunch. She led Aunt Linda, the Marshalls, and 2 women from her restaurant's event committee toward the guest wing. I intercepted them near the hallway. "The children's rooms are this way," Courtney said. "They are guest rooms," I corrected. One woman gave an awkward laugh. "We don't need a full tour." Courtney placed a hand on the nearest door. "Maddie already picked her colors. The room is not being reassigned." My sister's smile remained fixed. "Nicole is still adjusting to the idea." "There is no idea to adjust to." The guests looked from one of us to the other. Patricia approached before Courtney could answer. "The girls have always had different communication styles." "This is not a communication style issue," I said. My mother laughed softly. "Let's not discuss paperwork before lunch." I opened the door to the common sitting room instead. "The lake view is better from here." The guests followed me without argument. When I returned to my office later to take a call from the caterer, I found a leather closing folder on the edge of my desk. My father must have placed it there while guests were arriving. A white label on the cover carried the private lender's name and the words, "Barrett Sloan Hospitality Group." I did not open it. The transaction was frozen, and Dana had warned me not to search through documents merely because someone left them inside my home. I photographed the folder where it lay, closed my office door, and locked it. George noticed when I returned. "Did you see the packet?" he asked quietly. "I saw a folder you were not authorized to put in my office. It contains the cleaner structure we discussed." "We did not discuss a structure. You proposed a guarantee, and I refused. You said you would review the numbers." "I reviewed enough with Courtney to know another loan would delay the collapse, not prevent it." His face tightened. "Today is not the day for this." "Then you should not have brought closing documents." He looked toward Patricia, who was positioning Maddie and Owen beside the tree for photographs. "The family deserves one peaceful holiday," he said. "Then stop trying to complete a financial transaction during it." Lunch moved into dinner beneath a layer of practiced cheer. Maddie and Owen sat with 2 cousins near the windows. Sarah kept their table supplied with bread, sparkling cider, and harmless conversation. Evan stayed close to the children, answering questions without joining Courtney's repeated private exchanges with my parents. Patricia arranged a photograph after the main course. "Nicole, stand beside Courtney," she called. "This one should be before the move." Several guests shifted to make room. "There is no move," I said. My mother held her smile for the camera. "No need to be literal. A photograph labeled before the move is literal." Courtney lowered her voice. "Can you cooperate for 10 seconds? Not with a false caption." I stepped beside Sarah instead. The photographer took the picture before Patricia could rearrange anyone again. Dessert was served shortly after 8. The windows reflected the room back at us, turning the lake outside into darkness edged with city lights. Plates were cleared, coffee poured, and the children settled near the tree to open gifts. My mother tapped a spoon against her glass. The conversation softened. George stood beside her with the gold-wrapped box. Courtney moved closer, one hand resting on Maddie's shoulder. Patricia began by thanking everyone for coming. She praised George for protecting the family through difficult decisions, and described Courtney as the daughter who had always kept people connected. Then she spoke about the restaurants. She called them symbols of courage, community, and 84 families whose futures depended on Courtney's vision. She did not mention overdue rent, merchant advances, hidden transfers, or unsigned bookings. "At times like these," Patricia said, "family must recognize where its blessings can do the most good." Several guests looked toward me. She smiled as though we shared the next sentence. "Nicole has graciously agreed to let Courtney and the children begin a new chapter here in the Penthouse." Applause rose around the table. George handed Courtney the gold-wrapped box. She removed the paper and opened the velvet case inside. My parents' 2 guest keycards lay against black satin. Maddie smiled. Patricia lifted her champagne glass. "After New Year's, Nicole can pack at her convenience. She travels so often that the change will hardly disrupt her life." I placed my napkin beside my plate. Across the room, Sarah met my eyes. I breathed once before standing. The certified deed rested inside the narrow folder beneath my chair. I took it out and walked toward the center of the room while the applause faded unevenly behind me. Courtney still held the velvet box. George's closing folder remained locked in my office. Patricia watched me with the patience of someone who believed embarrassment would force me to cooperate. I raised the certified deed high enough for the county recorder's seal and my printed name to be visible. Hand me every guest keycard, or read the owner's name on this deed and explain why a lender has a document bearing my forged signature. For several seconds, the only sound in the penthouse came from the fire shifting behind the grate. Champagne bubbles climbed through untouched glasses. Candle wax and roasted orange still scented the room, but the warmth that had filled it moments earlier seemed to have withdrawn toward the ceiling. Courtney stood beside the Christmas tree with the velvet box open in her hands. My parents' 2 guest keycards rested against the black satin. Maddie remained near her mother, watching the adults with the uncertain expression of a child who knew a celebration had changed but did not understand why. Patricia recovered first. Her smile disappeared, leaving her face composed and hard. "You are humiliating your sister," she said. "I did not announce that she owned my home. You could have spoken to us privately. I tried. You chose to use 32 guests to make my answer harder." Aunt Linda sat 3 chairs from my mother. She had known me since childhood and had spent the evening congratulating me for being generous. "Nicole," she asked carefully, "did you ever agree to give Courtney the penthouse?" "No." The single answer moved through the room more effectively than a speech. Someone near the windows lowered his glass. One of George's former colleagues looked at my father, then at the deed in my hand. The woman who had praised me near the bar turned toward Patricia with visible confusion. My mother glanced around the room. "This is a family misunderstanding," she said. "Nicole is upset because the details were discussed before she was ready. There was no agreement to discuss. You said you would review the situation. I said I would review Courtney's financial records. I never offered my home, my credit, or my signature." George stepped closer. "Nicole, put the document down. We can resolve this after the guests leave." You brought a closing folder into my office and marked the deed for signing after the toast. His face changed. Patricia looked sharply at him, but she did not accuse him or ask what I meant. Her reaction told me she already knew. I held the certified deed toward my father. "Read the owner's name." He did not take it. "Nicole," he said, "nothing has been transferred. That is because I found out before you could complete it. No valid deed was signed. No mortgage was recorded." The lender froze the file. After I denied the authorization bearing my signature, a guest near the fireplace asked, "What authorization?" I kept my answer short. A document was submitted to a private lender stating that I approved an appraisal and intended to transfer this penthouse to Courtney. I did not sign it. Patricia lifted one hand. "There is no reason to discuss legal language in front of children." I agree. I looked at the deed rather than the false authorization. This document is simple. It was recorded in Cook County after my divorce settlement. It lists this address and one owner. I read the street address aloud. Then I read my full legal name and the recording date. I did not mention Courtney's overdue rent, my parents' retirement withdrawals, or the amount of the proposed loan. Those facts did not belong in front of Maddie and Owen. Ownership and consent were enough. My father remained beside me, staring at the county seal. "Is that deed current?" one of his former colleagues asked. "Yes. My attorney obtained the certified copy yesterday. A fresh title search confirms there has been no transfer and no new lien." The man turned to George. "Then why were we told Courtney was moving in?" George looked toward my mother before answering. "We believed Nicole would agree once she understood how much was at stake." Patricia added, "We were trying to prevent a family business from collapsing." Neither of them said they had misunderstood my answer. They admitted they had expected to change it. Courtney closed the velvet box. "You said you would help," she told me. "I offered to connect you with an independent restructuring specialist. You told me to close my restaurant and sell my house. I gave you options that did not require my property. You knew that wasn't enough. It was not the answer you wanted." Her voice rose slightly. "You were supposed to sign after dinner." The room became completely still. Courtney heard what she had said a moment after everyone else did. Evan's eyes moved from her to the deed in my hand. Aunt Linda whispered. After dinner? Courtney's fingers tightened around the box. That isn't what I meant. What did you mean? I asked. She looked at our mother. Patricia stepped between us verbally before Courtney could answer. She meant we expected the family discussion to be completed tonight. Before or after you announced the transfer is finished? I asked. My mother's jaw tightened. I turned to Courtney. Who told the lender I had already consented? She did not answer. Who told them my signature would be finalized after Christmas dinner? Courtney's face had gone pale beneath her makeup. Dad was handling the paperwork. That does not answer whether you knew I had never agreed. Evan placed one hand on Maddie's shoulder. Come with me, he said gently. You and Owen can finish opening gifts in the den. Maddie resisted. But Mom said, we'll talk about it later, Evan said. His voice remained calm. This is an adult problem and it is not yours. Sarah crossed the room and picked up the basket of unopened children's gifts. I need help carrying these, she told Owen. Your father can take the big ones. But I think you can manage the red bag. Owen reached for it. Maddie looked at Courtney once more, then followed Evan toward the den. Sarah went with them and closed the door without making the children appear to have been removed as punishment. Only after they were gone did I lower the deed. Give me the key cards, I said. Courtney looked down at the velvet box. Patricia spoke first. You cannot be serious. You attempted to transfer guest access as though it were ownership. The cards are being revoked tonight. We are your parents. You are guests in this building. We have had those cards for 6 years. And I allowed that because I trusted you. George reached toward Courtney. She handed him the box, and he placed it on the dining table between us. The 2 guest cards lay inside. I did not pick them up immediately. Are there any duplicates, temporary passes, mobile credentials, or additional cards connected to you? I asked. No, George said. Patricia folded her arms. You already know there aren't. I know what the building records show. I am asking you directly. We have no other cards, she said. Courtney removed a brass key from her handbag and set it beside the box. This is for the service cabinet in the guest hallway, she said. Mom gave it to me. I recognized it. It opened the locked storage cabinet containing spare linens and seasonal decorations, not an exterior door. My mother had no authority to give it away. Anything else? I asked. Courtney shook her head. I closed the velvet box and placed the cabinet key on top of it. The symbolic weight of the moment was not in the plastic cards. Leah could deactivate them with a few keystrokes. The power came from requiring my parents to surrender what they had begun treating as permanent rights. Patricia looked around at the guests. Are you all going to stand here while she throws her family out on Christmas? I have not asked anyone to leave, I said. The dinner is over, and the building will admit invited guests through the event list until 10:30. No one is being stranded. You planned this. I protected my home after discovering what you planned. One of the marshals collected her coat from the cloakroom. She approached me with her husband beside her. We didn't know, she said quietly. Patricia told us you had already agreed. I understand. I'm sorry we congratulated Courtney without asking you. Thank you. They left without speaking to my mother. Others followed. Some avoided my eyes, embarrassed by their participation. A few offered brief apologies. Several said nothing at all, which was better than pretending they had not heard what was said. No one formed a circle around my parents to condemn them. They simply stopped treating Patricia's story as fact. That loss of certainty affected her more than shouting would have. Aunt Linda paused beside the dining table. You wrote that I should remind Nicole about family responsibility, she told Patricia. Was that why I was invited? My mother's face remained controlled. You were invited because you are family. That wasn't my question. Patricia did not answer. Aunt Linda put on her coat and left. Within 20 minutes, the room had emptied from 32 guests to the people at the center of the dispute. Catering staff moved quietly between the kitchen and dining room, packing leftovers and clearing glasses without looking toward us. Evan returned from the den. The kids are watching a movie, he said. Sarah is with them. Courtney looked at him. We need to leave together. We will, he replied. After the adults finish, Patricia sat at the table and pressed her fingertips against her temple. We were desperate, she said. That is what you refuse to understand. George stood behind her chair. The restaurants employ 84 people. Our retirement is tied to the business. Courtney and Evan have children to support. Courtney added. We thought one temporary loan could keep everything from falling apart. The three of them spoke as a unit. None accused the others. None denied knowing the plan depended on a signature I had not given. You were desperate, I said. That explains why you wanted my help. It does not give you permission to manufacture it. George's voice lowered. The authorization was never meant to replace the deed. It was meant to make the lender act as though my consent was coming. We believed it was. No, you believed you could force it. Patricia looked up at me. Call the lender tomorrow, she said. Tell them this was a misunderstanding between relatives. Withdraw your accusation and let us negotiate a proper guarantee. The loan file is frozen. It can be reopened. Not with my property. You are going to destroy your sister's business over a form. The business was already failing. The form attempted to move that failure onto my home. Your father could face legal consequences. He knew the document was false when he sent it. Her expression changed from anger to appeal. He is 67 years old. He made one frightened decision. He had multiple opportunities to ask me. He chose a scanned signature instead. George moved around the table. I am asking you as your father, he said. Tell the lender no one intended fraud. I will tell them exactly what I know. I did not authorize the appraisal. I did not intend to transfer the property. I did not place my signature on that document. That language will make everything worse. The truth is not an escalation. Courtney pushed back her chair. And what happens to Maddie and Owen when we have to sell the house? They move with their parents to a home you can afford. You can say that because you have no children. I can say it because their home cannot be built by taking mine. Evan looked toward the den. We should go. Courtney gathered the overnight bags from beside the tree. She did not carry them toward the guest hallway. Evan took Owen's duffel and the children's gifts. Sarah helped Maddie with her coat while keeping the conversation ordinary enough that the girl did not have to walk through a room of adults staring at her. Before leaving, Maddie stopped beside me. Did you change your mind about my room? She asked. I crouched so my voice would not carry. I never promised you that room, sweetheart. I'm sorry someone made you believe it was decided. She looked toward Courtney, then back at me. Are you mad at me? No, none of this is your fault. I hugged her before Evan led the children to the elevator. My parents left last. Patricia did not say goodbye. George looked at the velvet box in my hand, then at the locked office door where he had placed the closing packet. You should return that folder unopened, he said. My attorney will arrange it. He nodded once and followed my mother into the elevator. At 10:28, Leah called. I have both guest cards in hand, I told her. I'll deactivate the credentials and remove their authorization profiles now. The elevator doors closed behind my parents 2 minutes before the change took effect. When the penthouse was finally quiet, Sarah helped me gather champagne glasses from the side tables. Pine needles covered the carpet near the tree. Empty chairs stood at uneven angles around the dining table, and lipstick marks remained on glasses raised to a transfer that had never existed. You did not ruin Christmas, Sarah said. I know. You don't sound convinced. I stopped them. That does not make it pleasant. She stayed on the sofa rather than driving home through the late-night snow. I slept only a few hours. The next morning, the penthouse smelled of cold coffee and extinguished candles. Gray daylight revealed every place Patricia had moved one of my photographs to make room for Courtney's family. Rectangles of cleaner paint remained on the walls where the frames had hung. Dana called shortly after 8. The lender opened the forensic review, she said. They preserved the original authorization, the file history, the sender information, and the appraisal records. They will ask you to sign a formal statement confirming you never authorized the document. I'll sign it. This will not be handled as a family disagreement. Any civil claim and any referral for prosecution will follow separate procedures. Nothing happens instantly because it is Christmas. I understand. Dana paused. The lender traced the upload to your father's account. They are referring the file to counsel. I looked at the empty spaces on the wall where my mother had removed my photographs. On the first business morning after Christmas, I signed a sworn statement at Dana's office. The document was 6 pages long and deliberately plain. I had never authorized an appraisal of my penthouse. I had never promised to transfer it to Courtney. I had never given George, Patricia, or anyone else permission to sign on my behalf. The signature on the preliminary transfer authorization had been copied from an older document and placed there without my knowledge. Dana watched me initial each page. "Read the last paragraph again before you sign," she said. I did. It confirmed that my statement concerned only facts I personally knew. I was not claiming to know what my parents had told themselves, what Courtney privately believed, or what punishment anyone deserved. I signed my name once, in blue ink. For the next several weeks, the case moved at the speed real consequences usually moved. Through preservation letters, attorney calls, document requests, and long intervals in which nothing visible happened. The lender's forensic team compared the false authorization with my original homeowners association form. The tiny break in the first stroke matched. The spacing, pressure pattern, and final curve matched. Metadata showed the authorization had been assembled on a computer associated with my father and uploaded through the email account he had used as the family contact. George retained his own attorney before responding. The lender pursued reimbursement for the appraisal, title work, compliance review, and legal expenses. Dana filed civil claims protecting my ownership interests and addressing the unauthorized use of my identity, signature, and residence. Any review by prosecutors remained separate. No one was arrested at a family dinner, and no judge issued a dramatic ruling in January. The records simply continued accumulating. Through formal disclosure, Dana eventually received the complete email chains that the lender had previously shown us only in redacted excerpts. They confirmed the sequence I had already begun to understand. My father uploaded the authorization. My mother selected Christmas as the pressure point. Courtney knew the lenders still required my direct signature. None of them needed to accuse the others. Their own messages connected the plan. Patricia called me repeatedly during the first week of January. I did not answer until she left a message saying Aunt Linda was spreading an incomplete version of Christmas. When I returned the call, my mother began without greeting me. "You need to correct what people are saying." "What are they saying?" "That your father forged your signature and that we tried to steal your home. Dad used my signature without permission. You announced that Courtney was receiving my home when I had not agreed. That language makes us sound criminal. I'm describing what happened. You know what I mean, people are imagining some calculated scheme." I thought of the annotated guest list and the words, "Help Nicole see reason." "I will send one factual statement to everyone who attended," I said. Relief entered her voice. "Good. Tell them this was a private financial discussion that became emotional." "That is not what I'm sending." I wrote the message with Dana's review. I told the 32 guests that I was the sole owner of the penthouse, had never agreed to transfer it, and had not authorized the document carrying my signature. I said all remaining issues would be handled through counsel and asked people not to involve the children. I did not mention the size of the loan, my parents' retirement losses, or Courtney's business debts. Patricia called again within 10 minutes. "You have made this permanent," she said. "No, the documents made it permanent. You could have protected the family name. You used the family name to pressure me." Several guests replied privately. The marshals apologized again. One of George's former colleagues wrote that he should have asked more questions before praising an arrangement he had never seen. Aunt Linda said she was embarrassed that Patricia had selected her as someone who could influence me. Others remained silent. The most important change was not that everyone sided with me. It was that they stopped accepting my mother's version automatically. That became clear in February. For 3 years, Patricia had served on the planning committee for a spring charity gala benefiting a local children's arts program. She had promised the committee an exclusive cocktail reception at the Penthouse before the main event. She had never asked me. The committee chair contacted me directly to confirm the reservation. I replied that I had not authorized the event and that Patricia no longer had guest access. 2 days later, my mother appeared at my office without an appointment. She stood inside the conference room wearing pearl earrings and a camel coat, prepared as though she were attending a luncheon rather than confronting me. "You cost me my position," she said. "You promised my home without permission." It was a 2-hour reception. The duration was not the issue. "The committee thinks I lied." "You did." Her expression hardened. "You enjoy watching me lose everything I built." "I did not tell them to remove you," I answered their question. She stared at me as if accuracy itself were an act of cruelty. By March, Patricia had resigned from the committee. Invitations she had once controlled began reaching my father without her name or stopped arriving altogether. She sold several pieces of jewelry and a small investment account to contribute toward the lender's costs and the anticipated civil settlement. She and George still lived in their Oak Park condo. They had not been thrown onto the street. But the life my mother had displayed as proof of her judgment had narrowed, and she could no longer borrow my address to make it appear larger. Courtney's consequences arrived less socially and more mechanically. Without the bridge loan, the second restaurant entered default. The landlord issued formal notices. Vendors moved the company to cash-on delivery terms. A merchant cash advance began withdrawing from receipts before payroll and rent could be paid. Courtney finally hired one of the restructuring specialists I had recommended. By then, there was less to save. The review found that revenue forecasts, sent to my parents, had used optimistic event bookings that were never signed. Money from the profitable first restaurant had been transferred to cover the second location's rent and debt payments. Vendor balances had been delayed while the dining room continued, ordering flowers, custom menus, and promotional photography to maintain the appearance of success. The second restaurant closed in April. There was no final glamorous dinner. Staff received notice, equipment was cataloged, and the landlord negotiated possession of the space. Some employees transferred to other restaurants. Others did not. The first location remained open under supervision while buyers reviewed its books. Evan contacted me only twice during that period. The first time, he told me he and Courtney had signed a temporary separation and financial agreement. They were not divorced. Their parenting arrangement was voluntary while their attorneys worked through the finances. The second time, he asked whether I still wanted a relationship with Maddie and Owen. I do, I said. Then I'll make sure the kids know that. Courtney and Evan agreed to sell their jointly owned house. After the mortgage and sale costs, Evan's share of the equity was protected under their agreement. Courtney's portion went toward obligations connected to the restaurant and debts she had not fully disclosed during their marriage. They moved into separate rentals within the same school district so the children did not have to change schools immediately. In May, Maddie visited the Penthouse with Evan and Owen. We ordered pizza and watched a movie in the den. After Owen fell asleep against his father's arm, Maddie followed me into the kitchen. "Why didn't we move here?" she asked. Her question was quieter than it had been on Christmas. "Because this home was never promised by the person who owned it. Mom said you would come around." "I know." Did she lie? I chose my words carefully. Your mom and your grandparents promised something they did not have permission to promise. The adults are dealing with the consequences now. Are you mad at her? Yes, but that does not mean you have to be. Maddie picked at the paper sleeve around her cup. Dad says I shouldn't choose sides. He's right. What if Mom says you ruin the restaurants? You can tell her you don't want to be placed in the middle. She looked toward the guest hallway. I didn't know the room wasn't mine. I know you didn't. I'm sorry I picked colors. You have nothing to apologize for. She hugged me before returning to the den. I held her longer than usual, aware that children often carried shame created entirely by adults. By late summer, a buyer had agreed to purchase Courtney's first restaurant, its name, and most of its operating assets. The sale price would not erase every debt, but it prevented a full liquidation and preserved many jobs. Courtney would not remain the owner. The buyer offered her a management position after a probationary period, with no authority over borrowing or company accounts. She had built something valuable once. Losing control of it did not erase her skill. It forced her to work without the protection of being the golden girl. My parents' condo became the next pressure point. Dana sent me a preliminary settlement range one evening in September. Between lender costs, appraisal expenses, civil legal fees, and other negotiated obligations, my parents might need to sell the condo if they could not arrange a payment schedule. I opened a spreadsheet after midnight. I entered the estimated settlement, my parents' remaining income, the condo value, their social security, and George's pension. Then I added a new line showing what would happen if I paid half. I could afford it. That was the dangerous part. Paying would not threaten the Penthouse or my company. It would not prevent me from retiring. I could write the check and allow my parents to remain in the condo while telling myself I had chosen compassion. Sarah came over the following evening. I showed her the spreadsheet before I could edit the numbers into something more flattering. "What are you trying to solve?" she asked. "They may have to sell." "Would selling leave them homeless?" "No, they could rent a smaller place." "Would they lose medical care?" "No." "Would they be unable to buy food?" "No." She looked at the highlighted amount I had considered paying. "Are you helping them?" she asked, "or are you trying to make them stop being angry with you?" The question was the same one she had asked before Christmas. This time, I knew the answer. "If I pay this," I said, "they will call it proof that family always comes through." "And what will you call it?" "Buying back the piece they took from me." Sarah waited. I closed the spreadsheet without saving the proposed payment. In October, Dana told me the parties had agreed to private civil mediation. The lender's reimbursement claims, my civil claims, access issues, legal expenses, and future communications could be negotiated together. Any prosecutorial review involving my father would remain outside the room. The mediation took place in a downtown law office on a rainy Monday. George, Patricia, and Courtney arrived with separate attorneys but sat together. They did not blame one another. Their position remained consistent. They had been desperate, believed I would eventually agree, and acted to protect the family. After 3 hours, their attorneys presented a draft settlement. It included a reimbursement schedule, permanent surrender of any access claim to the penthouse, and mutual restrictions on public statements. Then Patricia's attorney placed a separate declaration in front of me. The document said I acknowledged giving verbal consent to explore a family property transfer and that the written authorization resulted from a misunderstanding about how that consent should be documented. I read the paragraph twice. It contradicted my sworn statement, the emails, the guest list, and every conversation that had taken place before Christmas. "They want this signed as part of the settlement?" I asked Dana. "They are requesting it." "You are not required to agree." George leaned toward me. "We are not asking you to give us money," he said. "We are asking you to recognize that no one intended to harm you." Courtney sat beside him, thinner than she had been at Christmas. "The restaurants are gone," she said. "The house is sold. What more do you need?" "An accurate record." Patricia pushed the declaration across the table and placed a pen on top of it. "This is your last chance to keep the family together," she said. "Sign it, and we can still call ourselves a family." Through the glass wall at the end of the hallway, I could see Sarah waiting in the reception area. She was reading a book, not watching the room, because she trusted me to make my own decision. I looked down at the phrase, verbal consent, and rested my hand beside the pen. I left my hand beside the pen and looked at my mother. "Before I answer, I want each of you to answer one question," I said. "Did I ever tell you I agreed to transfer the penthouse?" Patricia's attorney shifted in his chair, but my mother answered first. "You never said the word yes," she said. "You also never gave us a fair chance to explain." I turned to George. "We believed you would agree once you understood the consequences," he said. Courtney kept her eyes on the declaration. "I thought you would come around." "That is not consent." No one disagreed. They only waited for me to soften the meaning. I tapped the paragraph, claiming I had given verbal approval. If you believed I had already agreed, Dad would not have needed to copy my signature. If you believed the penthouse was a voluntary gift, Mom would not have needed 32 people in the room. If you believed the restaurant could repay the loan, Courtney would not have hidden the real numbers. George leaned forward. "We were desperate." "I know," I said. "But desperation does not turn someone else's consent into a detail. We were trying to protect the family. You used my signature because you knew my answer." I pushed the declaration back across the table without touching the pen. "I will not sign a statement I know is false." Patricia's face tightened. "Then what exactly are you willing to do?" "I am willing to settle the civil claims on truthful terms. I will not pay your attorneys. I will not reimburse the money you put into the restaurants. I will not guarantee remaining debt, buy the business, or let either of you live in the penthouse. I will not ask any prosecutor to rely on a story that did not happen." Courtney looked up. "So, there is nothing left for us. There is a repayment schedule instead of a demand for immediate payment. There are professionals who can help you work through the remaining business debt. There is a clear arrangement for you to collect anything belonging to the children. Maddie and Owen can continue seeing me through a schedule that does not put them in the middle." "That sounds like terms for strangers," Patricia said. "It sounds like boundaries for relatives who used my home and identity without permission." The mediator carried our positions between two conference rooms for another 4 hours. Each time a revised draft returned, Dana and I checked it for language that softened consent into assumption. We removed a clause suggesting I had delayed a promised gift. We rejected another that would have required me to describe the Christmas announcement as a private misunderstanding. The false declaration disappeared from the final draft. The civil settlement required reimbursement for appraisal, title, security, and legal costs, permanent surrender of any claim to access the penthouse, restrictions against representing that my property belonged to the family, and a structured payment plan that did not make my parents homeless. The lender's separate reimbursement claim was resolved through counsel, and the agreement made clear that nothing in it controlled any prosecutorial review. My mother signed without looking at me. George read every page twice. Courtney asked whether the access restriction meant she could never enter the penthouse again. Dana explained that it meant she had no standing permission. She could enter only when I invited her, like any other guest. I signed that agreement because every sentence was true. When I stepped into the reception area, Sarah closed her book and stood. "How did it go?" she asked. I didn't fix their fear. She studied my face. And I finally understood it wasn't mine to fix. We walked out together beneath a steady autumn rain. Sarah did not ask whether I felt victorious. She knew I did not. I felt tired, relieved, and strangely lighter because the agreement no longer required me to carry their explanation alongside my own memory. The criminal review involving my father remained separate. I was not asked to choose a charge, negotiate a plea, or recommend a sentence. I provided the original HOA form, the false authorization, the voicemail, and a statement limited to what I knew. Several months later, George accepted a court-approved negotiated disposition. He acknowledged creating and sending the unauthorized document. He was ordered to pay restitution connected to the lender's appraisal and review costs, complete community service, and comply with a term of probation. His attorney informed Dana when the matter was resolved, but I did not attend the hearing. The precise terms belonged to the court, not to me. My father still described his choice as something he had done for the family. He never fully admitted that his fear of losing money had become a willingness to risk mine, but he could no longer call the signature a placeholder. His admission was part of the record. He also lost the role he had quietly claimed in my life for years. He would never again review my tax documents, hold copies of my forms, speak to a lender on my behalf, or help manage any account connected to me. When he asked whether I trusted him at all, I answered honestly, "I trust you to be my father. I do not trust you with my financial identity." Patricia's consequences were less visible in court and more visible everywhere else. The civil settlement tied her to the emails arranging unauthorized access and the Christmas pressure campaign. She sold the jewelry she had worn to charity galas and liquidated a small investment account to meet her portion of the payment schedule. She resigned from the arts committee after promising my penthouse as a venue without permission. My parents kept their Oak Park condo, but their retirement became narrower. They traveled less. My mother stopped hosting elaborate events she could not afford. She remained safe, housed, and insured. What she lost was the ability to present my property as evidence of her own success. Relatives who once called Patricia for every family detail began contacting me directly. Some still invited both of us. Others chose smaller gatherings. When Aunt Linda planned a summer birthday, she asked me separately whether I wished to attend instead of allowing my mother to answer for me. It was a small change, but it removed the channel Patricia had used for years to translate my silence into agreement. I did not ask anyone to exclude her. I simply stopped lending her the penthouse, my silence, or my reputation as tools for controlling the room. Courtney's business consequences continued after mediation. The second restaurant had already closed. Its equipment was sold, and the landlord took possession of the space. The first restaurant was purchased by a management group that kept its strongest staff and paid down part of the remaining debt. Courtney lost the brand she had treated as proof that she could not fail. The new owners eventually offered her a general manager position at another restaurant in their group. She accepted. She could still build menus, train staff, recognize what customers wanted, and make a dining room feel alive. She could no longer borrow against a company she controlled or hide losses behind family money. She and Evan remained separated. Their jointly owned house was sold under the agreement they had both signed. They rented smaller homes within the same school district and followed a temporary parenting schedule that required full financial disclosure before either parent made a major decision affecting the children. No one lost custody during a dramatic hearing. No one became destitute overnight. Courtney and Evan attended mediation over finances and parenting logistics, then continued following the temporary schedule while the separation remained unresolved. Courtney simply had to live at the scale her actual income supported. In early December, she asked to meet me alone. We chose a quiet cafe halfway between our offices. She arrived in a manager's uniform beneath her coat, her hair tied back, without the designer handbag she had once carried into every family event. "I'm not here to ask for money," she said before sitting down. "I didn't assume you were. I need help with Maddie." I waited until she was ready to continue. She keeps asking why I told her the penthouse room was hers. I've said the adults misunderstood each other, but she knows that isn't the whole truth. "It isn't," I said. Courtney looked down at her hands. What am I supposed to say without making her hate me? The truth without asking her to comfort you? Her eyes lifted to mine. "Tell her that adults promised her something they did not own," I said. "Tell her I don't own. Away from her. Tell her she did nothing wrong by believing you. Then let her be upset without explaining why you were desperate." Courtney's mouth tightened. "That makes me sound terrible. It describes what happened. What you do after saying it will tell her whether you are still that person." She was quiet for a long time. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not only about the room. I knew you hadn't agreed, and I thought if we made everything public, you would give in." The apology did not restore trust. It did not return the money my parents lost or erase the document my father created. It did not make me offer her a key card, a loan, or a place to stay. But it was the first time Courtney described her decision without hiding behind the word family. "I hear you," I said. "Trust will take longer than one conversation." "I know," she said. A week later, she told Maddie the truth. Christmas that year was smaller. I invited Sarah, Dana, Aunt Linda, the Marshalls, and 2 relatives who had respected my boundaries without turning the conflict into entertainment. Evan brought Maddie and Owen during his scheduled parenting time and stayed for dinner, so the children were not placed between households or asked to carry messages. I opened the door for every guest myself. No one had a permanent guest key card. Leah had arranged event access for the evening, and every name on the list was there because I had placed it there. The penthouse looked different. I had removed the furniture Patricia selected, rehung the photographs she had hidden, and turned the guest bedroom back into a room for people I chose to welcome. The framed picture of Sarah and me was again beside the fireplace. The dining table held 12 settings instead of 32. And no handwritten notes ranked the guests by how useful they might be. There was no floor plan taped to the wall, and no luggage waiting in the foyer. After dinner, Maddie stood with me beside the window. Snow moved through the city lights, and the lake beyond the glass was nearly invisible. "Mom told me she shouldn't have promised me something that wasn't hers," she said. "That was the truth she needed to tell you. She said you didn't take my room away because it was never my room." I nodded. "You were allowed to be excited. The mistake belonged to the adults." Maddie leaned against my arm. "Can I still sleep here sometime? When we plan it together, and your parents agree, yes." "That's different," she said. "It is," I replied. "A welcome is not the same as a claim." Across the room, Owen was teaching Dana the rules of a card game he appeared to be inventing as he went. Evan carried dessert plates to the kitchen. Aunt Linda laughed when Owen changed the rules for the 3rd time. Sarah stood near the windows with a mug in both hands, present without watching over me. When the evening ended, I walked each guest to the elevator. Maddie hugged me and asked about a weekend visit in January. Evan said he would check the schedule with Courtney and call me. No one assumed. No one announced. We made a plan. For years, my parents had treated my strength like a family asset available whenever their decisions became expensive. Saying no did not destroy our family. It destroyed the arrangement in which my answer had never been allowed to matter. The penthouse had always been mine on paper. It took me 1 more year to make it mine in every other way. You should never confuse love with unlimited access to your money, home, time, or identity. A healthy family asks for help, accepts your answer, and takes responsibility for its own decisions. When relatives hide debts, use children to pressure you, or make promises with property they do not own, protecting yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. You can offer practical guidance, professional contacts, or emotional support without signing loans, paying debts, or surrendering what you work to build. You should also document important conversations, protect your financial records, check ownership documents, and seek qualified legal advice when someone uses your name or signature without permission. Forgiveness does not require restoring the same access that allowed the betrayal. Trust must be rebuilt through honesty, accountability, and consistent behavior over time. Most importantly, you are not responsible for saving adults from every consequence of their choices. You can care about their fear without carrying their burden. You can love children in the family without letting those children become tools of manipulation. Your boundaries do not destroy a family. They reveal whether that family respects you as a person. Subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more stories about courage, justice, and women who finally choose themselves.